I'm, of course, very happy to be here with Ian Katz. What Channel 4 is doing, as most of you are aware, is always very interesting. It's probably our most risk-taking channel in the PSB world, and so it's one that we always like to look at. What's interesting about Ian is that he is someone who didn't actually, he's only had one TV job before this TV job.
Some people don't consider it a TV job at all.
Exactly. And he started, his one TV job before this TV job when Alex Mann hired him to join in January of 2018. So this is actually your 2-year anniversary, I think, this month, right?
Wow.
That's
I'm
amazing.
glad I've got some wine.
You've got some wine, thank God. He ran BBC Newsnight for 5 years, from 2013 to 2017. The program won awards during that time for the Kids Co scandal, also investigating the Grenfell fire. Before that, he was at The Guardian for 23 years. Among other things, he launched the paper's website, ran foreign reporting, and the early 2000s, as deputy editor and head of news, he oversaw the paper's coverage of the WikiLeaks trove of data and also the phone hacking. So on the surface, perhaps he wouldn't be sort of the logical choice, or maybe he's a slightly left field choice, to head up all of programming for a major PSB channel. But now 2 years in, what I think is interesting is he can look back on a really decent, a really well done 2019, and we're going to talk about that to start. And then, of course, we're going to talk about his slate for 2020. So the idea is we're going to sort of look a little bit back, look very much forward, talk about what he's interested in, where Channel 4 is going in terms of programming. We're going to talk for about 30 minutes, then we're going to open up to you. We've got a lot of clips, so we have a lot of stuff to get through, and I'll do my best, and Ian will help us along. So I think before we start talking, Ian, why don't we run the sizzle for 2019, and we'll just see what Channel 4 was up to in 2019. So a lot there. Dairy Girls, Leaving Netherland, Unholy Civil War, and of course Bake Off. Was 2019 a defining year for you?
I don't know about define. I was trying to decide before that whether to quibble with your characterization of it as decent or to graciously accept it. I think it was.
Please quibble.
I think it was a bit better than decent, actually. I think the football manager's technical term for it was a game of two halves. I think we had quite a tough first half and an absolutely brilliant second half of the year. And I really felt like my slate, or the shows that I had more input into, really started coming through from the summer. And we finished the year in, I think, a really strong place. We were pretty much level on share across the demographics. And in peak, we were the only commercial broadcaster that was up for all demos, individuals and youngs and ABC Ones. And crucially for us, significantly up on BAME audiences, which was a big objective of ours. So I was really pleased at a sort of performance level, but I suppose almost more, when I came into this job, I said what I really want the channel to do is to make waves. And when I look at that sizzle, I think that's a lot of waves in 1 year, all the way from that Brexit drama at the start of the year, which was my first commission pretty much when I came through the door, which people were talking about for 3 or 4 months before it came out.
It landed correctly, that's for sure. You didn't actually, you greenlit it, but it had been in the works for a while.
No, the script had been developed, but it had been rejected as commissioned.
Really?
So I commissioned that piece.
Good for you. It was the right one.
That's
the one with Benedict Cumberbatch. Yeah.
Yeah, and I can't take credit for the timing. It was Boris Johnson delivered that. But we started the year with that. Then we had Neverland, which was an extraordinary piece that's been in development for years, but perhaps the most dramatic bit of documentary filmmaking I've seen in years on any channel. And then Jade in the summer was a sort of extraordinary talking point that did exactly what I want the channel to do, which is to get at proper, big, meaty contemporary issues, but in a really visceral, emotional, propulsive way, often through personal stories. Yeah. And for Sama, which just got an Oscar nomination last week, the most extraordinary film about war that I've seen on any TV channel in years, through Smuggled and The Tribe, I felt like there was a sort of drumbeat of noise around the channel all year that I'm really proud of. And actually looking at that tape, I was thinking, I'm not sure I can remember a year on the channel with drama as extraordinary as we saw last year. The Virtues is, I think, one of the stellar pieces that any British broadcaster has put on, but we had End of the Fucking World 2, which is now our most binged ever streaming show. We had the I Am series with Vicky McClure and Sam Morton and so on. That was really properly bold, the sort of drama no other PSB, no other broadcast I think would put on. Yeah. So I think it was a really strong drama year, comedy big priority of mine. I thought it was a fabulous year, all the way from the old sort of favourites, The End of Catastrophe, The Return of Derry Girls, to all the new shows we rolled out this summer. You saw a bit of This Way Up with Aisling B, but Stath came back, fantastic show, Game Face 2. And then the other piece, I suppose, that really started to come through in the latter part of the year was the shows that are potential schedule building blocks in the years to come. So you saw Snack Masters on there, that won its slot for Youngs on its first outing, really feels like something that's going to be a staple of the schedule. The Doghouse at 8 was our first really big 8 o'clock show that we've gone back on at scale.
Yeah, I mean, you commissioned like 18 episodes or something with the Doghouse, didn't you? So it's a lot.
It's a big number, yeah.
It's a big number.
And there were some shows that actually we loved so much last year when we got them in that we decided not to TX them last year because we went straight to the series. So the best example of that is Five Guys, which I'm going to show you later, which is a on the face of it, a dating show. It's much more than that. But we did what was going to be a TX pilot, loved it so much, we went straight to 10 for next year. So that was for me, that was the sort of missing piece, and that started to come through from the summer.
So what did you learn from 2019 in terms of sort of how to commission or how to work with indies? Because it is a very special place, Channel 4, because you have to work with the independent sector and you don't own the content. I mean, it's a different kind of thing. So what was the outstanding thing that you learned about how to navigate scheduling a big channel?
Well, I think, look, I mean, one of the big issues for us is that we've had a period of massive change at the channel. Every time there is a sort of regime change at the top of a channel, I think particularly at a channel like Channel 4, where the commissioning structures and the channel management structures are integrated. It's not like the BBC where you can change a control and all the commissioners stay in place. So you had a huge amount of change in my commissioning team. More than half of my senior team have changed over in the year. And then last year, our big challenge was to open all these offices around the country, Leeds, Bristol, Glasgow, and to staff them up, and that meant a lot more change. So there's been a huge amount of change in my commissioning team, and they all have had to settle and get their eye in and form their relationships. And so I think there's been quite a lot of sort of movement and disruption there. And really in the last sort of 6 months to a year, I think things have sort of settled
down, right.
And I came out in my first summer of 18, and published what I call the Creative Contract, which was essentially a document saying, look, we know that in an unbelievably competitive world for ideas, where frequently we're competing with SVODs that have got squillions more than us, we have to be the best partner to work with, whether it's about the terms of the deals we do, or whether it's our willingness to really lavish TLC and attention on a project, or whether, frankly, we're sufficiently transparent and quick to deal with. We need to do better on all those fronts, and we've done better on some of them and not all of them. And the sort of project, I think, for the next 6 months or a year is to really deliver on that and make sure that we are as quick and transparent and reactive a partner to do business with as I'd like.
Okay. Let's talk a bit about Factual. This has been a huge push for you. I mean, you come from news, you have a background in investigative news. What's your commissioning of factual investigative journalism pieces? I mean, what does that look like, and how important is that to the schedule and to Channel 4, particularly in these times that we're in right now? And I'm moving us towards Michael Barrymore, just so you know.
Well,
Michael Barrymore.
I think investigation in general is one of the functions that PSBs fulfill that you don't, by and large, get from the SVOD world. And it's incredibly expensive, often very difficult. I mean, something like Neverland was years of patient development. For Sama was years and years of work. So I think it's a distinguishing feature. And I think what you asked me what we learned last year. I mean, the way that Neverland punched through, not just in the UK, but across the world, was extraordinary. And what it reminds you of is the power of genuine revelation.
Yeah.
If you can genuinely not just tell a story, but bring something fundamentally new to it that changes people's conception of it, it will break through. It will find its audience. And the most cheering thing about Neverland, when I scheduled Neverland, 4 hours of it over across 2 days, a lot of people said, "Are you kidding? 2 hours and 2 hours, people are not going to watch it." One of our most watched shows of last year, and one of our most streamed shows by young viewers. So there's a massive appetite out there for really strong, revelatory, factual programming. And I think the Barrymore film, which we're about to show a clip of, is another great example of how stuff can punch through.
Should we run that now?
Yeah,
Let's run
great.
that. Barrymore. So when is that going to come out?
That comes out. Have we done a TX date for it yet? It's in the next few weeks. I don't think we've given a TX date for it.
And it's a
yet.
one-off?
But it's a one-off. It's a 90. But can I just, because I mean, watching it strikes me that the power of that film, I think, and it's, by the way, I just saw the last cut of it last night. It's a staggering piece of work by Keo Films. These are really relatable stories that we all remember the Barrymore story almost 20 years ago. It's sort of lurking around our subconscious. What's so extraordinary about this film, I think, and the best of these films, Jade did it a bit in the summer last year, is this film actually lays bare a really profound sort of failure, institutional failure to deliver justice. You come to the end of this film and it's jaw-dropping that after 20 years no one has been brought to account for this death. But it also tells an extraordinary story at a really emotional, visceral level about what a catastrophe like this does to a family. So it's just a gripping insight into that. And the thing that for me really sort of takes it to another level and makes it sort of quintessentially Channel 4 is it's an extraordinary window on the way the media, celebrity, the public intersect over these kind of totemic stories. So in the way that Jade took you into the birth of reality television, this film takes you into the news of the world 20 years ago, and the intersection between celebrity and
tabloids and and how they were reporting it as well as how the family was treated. Factual. You have some other factual things that are coming. I wrote down some Falconio, an Outback Murder, the segregation experiment write-off with Sandy Toksvig. I mean, some of this stuff is. It's almost like it's important because it's talking about our society. It's talking about Britain. And we'll talk a little bit about that. Like why is that Channel 4, the write-offs with Sandy? That's about illiteracy, right? Adult illiteracy. So
I'm really proud of. I mean, the write-offs is a perfect example of something that I think has to be a really central thread of Channel 4, which is taking pressing issues, in this case, adult illiteracy, and applying all the creative flair and lateral brilliance of the British production sector to come up with ways of engaging broader audiences with those issues than you would do if I just said, right, adult illiteracy, we must do a 2-hour documentary on it. And I think that is, I don't know if it's the Channel 4 special sauce, but I think it's part of the special sauce. And we did it last year. Well, you're the channel
of educating Essex and educating Yorkshire and all those.
Right.
That was.
But last year, I mean, we did several last year. We did Mums Make Porn, which was a really, I think, inventive way of looking at pornography. We did Smuggled, which I think only Channel 4 would have done, where we actually took a bunch of Brits out of the country and got them to smuggle themselves back into the country to show the weaknesses in the border force. And in write-offs, the Sandy Toksvig film, it's a spelling bee. It's a spelling bee format with all the jeopardy and sort of emotional weight of that gets you into the issue. What was the other one you mentioned?
I mentioned the segregation experiment.
The segregation experiment I mean, we did a thing last year called the Great British School Swap, which was about taking a bunch of kids from a predominantly white school and putting them in a predominantly Asian school and then reversing it. It was an astonishing window on race more broadly in Britain, but through the kind of almost unguarded eyes of kids. And
I liked it because it was like a wife swap, but something that was important because it was talking about kids in schools. Yeah. Anyway, you know what I mean.
But I think this piece explores similar territory with almost the reverse idea. So what it does is it takes an integrated class and does a project that they've been doing in America and says, if you segregate an integrated class at the right age, you can actually intervene in a way that makes those children less likely to slip into all the usual sort of racist tropes that would otherwise sort of congeal around them.
Yeah. Now, we have a slate sizzle of your whole 2020 slate. Do you want to cue that up, or do you want to just run it and then talk about it? I mean,
why don't we run it?
Run it. You'll talk about it. Okay, so let's run the 2020 slate sizzle. So this is all the shows for 2020 that are coming. So there's a lot there. A lot of penises, yeah. Windsor seems
just the right number of penises.
Just the right number, okay.
As opposed to the 100 vaginas that we put on screen last year.
That's true. That's right.
There are fewer penises this year than there are vaginas last year.
That may be the quote. And then the Windsor piece, that's a comedy, right?
Yes, which astonishingly, those of you who know about the realities of scripted drama will know that we haven't been able to update that. That actually was scripted and in the can a month ago. It's a testimony to, it's an astonishing show, The Windsors. When I heard the news about Harry and Meghan, I thought, oh my God, are we going to have to go back into the edit and remake the show? And I went to see the head of comedy and she said, no, you wouldn't believe it. It's all in there. And it just feels unbelievably timely. It's coming soon.
That's right. Talk about timely. And do they talk about their brand? Do they talk about the brand? I hope so.
There's plenty of branding. I don't want to give anything else away. But I suppose looking at that tape, I do feel that, and that's not all the shows for the year, obviously, that's the set of shows we launched this month. But I do feel like last year, I talked a lot about dialing up the difference as our sort of key priority, which was all about distinctiveness. And I think that was and is critical for Channel 4, I think. What I've tried to layer over that, as thinking about this year, is three priorities really: scale, noise, and fun. So scale is about making sure we've got the shows that we can get back at volume, that will do big, broad audiences, and can be over time the building blocks of the schedule. And I think there's quite a few in there you'll have seen on tenterhooks, because it's 8:15 and 15 minutes ago. Crazy Delicious, which you saw on
where
there.
They eat the set.
Went out. It's the maddest cooking show you've ever seen. It has an entirely edible set. And the cooks actually have to forage their ingredients from the set. And the wonderful Jade Adams, who does actually eat quite a lot of the set.
And that's a co-pro with Netflix, right?
It's a co-pro with Netflix, yeah, which is really interesting. The whole area of unscripted co-pros is a new area that's obviously developing, and we've got some really good collaborations there. But for me, that's squarely in the zone of...
That's in fun.
Well, it's fun and a hope scale.
Hope scale.
Unless it doesn't turn out to be scale, in which case it was just about fun. But it's there. You saw the fantastical Craft Factory. There's another bonkers show we've got, which is a sort of competitive craft show.
We've done everything else. We've done pottery, we've done baking. Why not crafts?
Exactly. And there's some crafts, I'm not even sure how to describe some of the crafts in there, like making large cats.
Making large cats?
Yeah. And then we've got Five Guys, which we touched on. So there's a good, I think, selection of shows, which, and then coming later in the year, obviously Taskmaster, which we brought in last year. And then I think there's plenty of noise there too.
Do you feel constrained because, I mean, your budget hasn't changed. Your budget is sort of steady state. It's about $500 million. Is that constraining you in this world that we're living in now to have?
Well, are you saying, would I rather have a whole?
Would you rather have more money?
The answer is yes. Look, it's a competitive market for ideas in which we are never going to win on money. Right? And that means we have to fall back on thinking very hard about what it is we can offer to anyone with a brilliant idea, sorry, I'm repeating myself, but whether it is TLC for their, I mean Max, which was the guy with the scene with the
Saying
vicar,
the priest,
that
yeah.
ain't gonna work
Nobody
anymore.
believes in this stuff anymore. Yeah.
That's some of you will have recognised him. That's Oti Fagbenley, who is an actor in *Handmaid's Tale*. That's Oti's first comedy project. He's written it. He stars in it. But he's never written comedy before, and it's been a labour of love over 2 or 3 years when our head of comedy's been completely devoted to it. Now, those are the kind of soft things that we can deliver that those with more money than us are not that interested in delivering.
Yeah. Let's talk about drama, because in a sense, drama is the big problem with the SVODs and with the big money coming in, because drama is getting so expensive, and the ambition for drama, you have to make it slick. It has to look premium. It has to be fantastic, and of course that takes money. So how does Channel 4 play in drama, in episodic premium drama?
Well, I'm glad you're asking me that question this week, while we've got a fantastic hit on the telly, Dead Water Fell. I hope some of you have seen it. I mean, it's a great example. I mean, it's not made on a shoestring, Dead Water Fell. It's got fabulous production values, but nor is it a $5 or $10 million an hour drama. It's a highly relatable, propulsive piece that resonates unbelievably in Scotland, where it's located. It's our biggest ever drama launch in Scotland, but also has lots of universal themes. So it feels very Scottish if you're in Scotland, feels very British. It's just great storytelling.
And what does it cost per ep? $2 million?
I maybe won't say that because I'm not sure that's
But it's not.
But it's not. It's
not huge.
Yeah, it's an awful lot closer to that than it is to 5 or 10 million.
12, okay, got it.
And similarly, we had at the end of last year The Accident, which was again a very relatable story about an industrial accident in Wales that resonates. So I think the answer to that is we need stories that really speak directly to not just British audiences, but actually, I think, subsets of the British audience. I think that our biggest learning about this in the last couple of years has been the success of Derry Girls, which is a huge hit nationally, but starts off by being a massive hit in Northern Ireland.
Yes.
Like 60 or 70% of Northern Ireland watches it. Right. Most of Scotland watches it. Yeah. And so it's a hit before it reaches the rest of the country. And I think locating our stories very strongly in specific places gives us a real sort of point of difference.
We've got a clip for the Russell T Davies.
Yeah.
So talk about that, because that's part of this doing drama but differently.
So I think the Russell piece, which is called Boys, and it's an unbelievably funny. I mean, it's really funny, and it's about AIDS. So if you had to kind of describe Channel 4 and drama, I think we're the people who can make a comic drama about the AIDS crisis in the 80s. Sort of captures quite a lot. Have a look at the...
Yeah, let's run the clip. So this is Russell T Davies, Boys.
Actually, the line in there about the disease targeting the letter H reminded me that is a co-production with HBO Max, which I suppose makes a broader point, really, which is that there is scope to co-produce in this extraordinarily kind of sort of variegated landscape that we've now got, that has 6 or 7 streaming services all spending billions. There is scope to find co-production partners for stuff that you would not think of as obviously the sort of international drama fare. Yeah. And that's really quite energizing. So this show, I won't get into production budgets, but this has very high production values and an international partner, but is, I think, quintessentially Channel 4's show, just as Russell's Queer as Folk was when it first went out.
I mean, we know that the SVODs aren't really friends or foes anymore. They're kind of somewhere in between.
Depends which day.
Depends which day, exactly. How are you finding working with them? I mean, how does it change your commissioning? Are you having to commission faster? Are you having to I keep hearing lots of broadcasters saying, my God, we have to we have to get right ahead of them because they're out there, they've got tons of money, they're grabbing up all the ideas. I mean, look at all these deals they've done with sort of output deals and, first look deals. I mean, how has that changed what you can do? Does it make you...
Well, I think, look, if you ask drama producers what it's like dealing with Netflix or Amazon or, not so much the news streamers, but in my experience, they tend to say two things. They say, on the plus side, you get really quick answers and you get really great budgets. And on the negative side, they swallow up all your rights and you have a sort of 5-minute window in which you either land or you don't, and then you sort of you risk disappearing under the waves, and you may not be a very big deal in their world. And so the question for me is, how do we cut against that? Right? Now, we can't compete on the money. We have to be quicker. We have to compete on ease of dealing with. But what we really can compete with is TLC and impact. So, particularly with British stories, we only make 5, 6, maybe 7 pieces a year. Each one of them gets absolutely bespoke and dedicated attention all the way through, from the development process through production, through our amazing marketing teams, and we desperately want it to land. And what I'm finding, particularly with writers actually, is the appeal of that weighed against the money and the other things that the SVOD world can offer is growing. And that there is a sense among some people that you can toil away for years and drop something into the SVOD pond and it just disappears under the surface. Much better to try and launch it with impact on a PSP.
Interesting. Well, that's good. I mean, that's good that the writers are maybe coming to that conclusion.
And glass is half full.
Yeah, exactly. So let's talk a little bit more about digital. You're building, obviously, the channel's building an online presence. You've got a lot of catch-up. There's, what we call BVOD. Is this impacting what's the digital programming strategy? And are you thinking, I have to drop things first online before I put them in the channel? Are you going to have an original commissioning budget for online? What's your plan in that? And obviously, as part of that, it's like, how do you deal with social, and also how does BritBox?
Well, look, I think, there's a bunch of different answers, right? Like every broadcaster in the world, I suspect, we are constantly fretting about our windowing strategies. What is the optimal windowing solution between linear and digital, which allows you to give the viewer what they want, drive your digital growth as quickly as possible, but not cannibalize your linear performance in a way that would threaten your revenues, because the vast proportion of our revenues are still in linear despite the extraordinary growth of digital revenue. So you'll have seen, if you're looking at Channel 4's VOD service, all 4, more and more we're box setting things that traditionally we didn't box set. So people thought of box setting as a scripted thing. This month we've box setted Naked Attraction. Last month we box setted First Dates. Over the course of the next 6 months, you'll see a lot of the kind of shows that maybe you didn't expect to ever see box setted, because our starting point is that the viewer probably wants everything box setted if they can get it. So we are shifting that substantially. Then there's an issue around when we allocate our budget across genres and types of programming. What we're increasingly doing is saying, which are the genres, which are the types of program which disproportionately perform well on VOD? And can we shift money gradually towards those areas without crashing the linear schedule? Separately to all of that, we are investing in social content. So we've just established this thing called the DCU, Digital Creative Unit, which will be based in Leeds, which will give us our own in-house expertise. Until now, although Channel 4 and E4 are very strong on social, it's all been outsourced. So we will have an internal unit that is brilliant on the distribution of social content, but also has the capacity to make it.
So they're going to make shows, or they're basically going to just viralize content you already have and socialize content you have?
Well, initially they'll be doing exactly what the companies who do our social media at the moment do, which is to work with the existing content, recut it. I mean, they do incredibly creative things with it.
Right, sure.
And then what we're also doing is we are investing in content for social. So, for instance, we've got a strand called Sparks, where we commission a number of indies to make us X dozen shorts a year, which then go out on our social channels, much like BBC Three does. We now have a Factual strand as well, which Barcroft makes for us. We're developing a teen service, which is going out to tender imminently. So it'll be a combination of stuff that we're commissioning from indies and some stuff that we are making ourselves in this unit.
It's quite a lot, really. I mean, how much of your budget is going towards that?
I can't say.
10%, 20%?
It's probably less than that, but it's a significant. It's a number in millions as opposed to. It's more than that.
Yeah, well, it's important, particularly because of the youth demographic, and obviously not wanting to lose them. And if they're on social, go to them. Hopefully, bring them back.
It's a recognition. I mean, when we sat down and thought, what can we do to enhance our offer for teenagers? We started with a load of thinking about linear, and actually the reality is that our demographic live on social media. So if we don't make content for them there, we are just not going to connect with them.
Yeah. So let's talk about scale shows. And we're working up to the clip of Five Guys, yeah? So scale shows, I think of Hunted began in 2015, First Dates began in 2013, Bake Off, obviously, Gogglebox. How important are scale shows? They are important. We talked about Delicious.
Yeah, I think they're hugely important, and any schedule needs a half a dozen sort of big beasts, which ideally can run. I mean, if you're a controller like me, the dream is of a show like 24 Hours in A&E, which you can have 20 or 30 episodes of, or Gogglebox, which is a staple all the way through the year, and they just give you a spine upon which to build the whole schedule. And we are in the process of generating a sort of new family of those, and I'm really pleased by, as I said earlier, some of the shows that came through last year. Five Guys is the one I mentioned, which we looked at doing a pilot of and liked so much we went straight to 10.
You want to show that?
Yeah.
Let's show Five Guys.
I should of course have explained the show. In case you haven't worked it out. Five guys move in to the house, home, apartment of one woman, different woman every week. And they live in a degree of squalor, sometimes on the sofa floor, until she evicts them. And she evicts them one a morning at breakfast. It's kind of The Bachelor in reverse, all in a confines of a home. The reason I love it, I mean, I love it for a million reasons, but one of the reasons I love it is because it's actually got the sort of, just as First Dates came out of the Channel 4 documentaries department and has a fantastic documentary quality about it, this has a documentary quality. It's a really good documentary. It's a rig in the house for a week, and it's not made with the kind of gloss of an entertainment show. It's made with the sort of spit and sawdust of a doc, and I think that's what gives it its charm.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, these building blocks are, as you say, really important. We'll see how this does. Obviously, Bake Off was a pretty important building block. So just because we're on that, when Sandy said she was leaving the show, did you sort of get a clenching in the pit of your stomach and think, oh my God, is that going to kill Bake Off for Channel 4 when Sandy Toksvig leaves, or did you know it was coming?
Look, Sandy, I'm a super fan of Sandy, and I would have been gutted if I'd lost her from the channel. So if Sandy had said, I don't ever want to make any more television on Channel 4, I would have felt as you described. But I feel like what Sandy did along with Noel and Prue and Paul was to prove that the transition could be made to Channel 4 and create a completely new version of the show, which feels, although not very much has changed, sort of quintessentially Channel 4. And so I'm very confident that the show is in great shape and that actually making a small casting change out of the 4 as opposed to the 3 that changed last time will be actually a way of changing the show in an interesting way. And
So who's in the frame? Who's in the frame?
Well, you read the papers.
Yes, but you're here.
All I would say is I'm very encouraged by the levels of interest that we've experienced in the last week or two. And I mean, what I'm really thrilled about is that there's going to be lots of Sandy on the channel elsewhere. So you talked about write-offs. We're developing a couple of other projects with her. I think she's a fantastic voice for the channel.
Great. Now, there was, just speaking of these big beasts, I mean, there was some talk in the press this week that you might bring Big Brother back. Really?
No?
No. Okay.
You mustn't believe what you read in the papers.
Well, just wanted to check.
Not that I don't love the show.
No.
I love that show, but...
Let's talk about nations and regions. You know, you've already mentioned that this has been a big, corporately, this has been a big change for Channel 4 this year, opening up the regional hubs, the national headquarters in Leeds. So first of all, my big question is, how much time are you now spending on trains?
A lot.
A lot.
And I will be on a train in 9 hours' time, I think, on the way to Leeds. Look, it's already had a massive impact. I mean, it's probably just over a year since we announced we were going to do this, and it's kind of extraordinary, I think, that we've now got, as of last week, 3 offices open: Bristol, Glasgow, Leeds, with commissioners based now in all of them.
Yeah.
We're not completely up to our full complement yet, but we've got, you know, more than, I think, half a dozen commissioners now in Leeds and 3 or 4 in both Glasgow and Bristol. And I'll tell you what's made an instant impact is all of our meetings now, all of our key meetings have all the officers in them on video conferencing. I have to say, and be honest, and say that the first 5 minutes of every meeting is a sort of painful attempt to get the Skype to work.
Yeah.
I wonder if that's ever going to end. But once you're past that, the register, the tone, the nature of those conversations is changing in a really interesting way.
Is it hard, though, because, I mean, in the old days, there was more command and control from the center, and everybody was in one room, and there was maybe, you know, you maybe had a brainstorm by the coffee machine. Do you see what I mean? There was more, you were all together. Is that going to be more difficult now? And how do you, as the main program commissioner, sort of delegate and yet keep control of these people who are very far away doing things?
We have a ton to learn about how you make multi-site creative teams work effectively. Yeah. If I sat here and said to you, we're going to do that, I'd be lying through my teeth. We've got instincts about how to do it, and we've got a first draft, and we're trying it now, and things will work and other things won't, and we'll change it. But look, we're not the first people to try it, right? There are dozens of creative companies around the world, in everything from, I was at a meeting at the Frame store not so long ago, and, they work constantly across 8-hour time zone shifts. Numerous creative companies do it. We'll figure it out. In the short term, I think what's critical is that people like me are quite present in all of our teams, and so I'm traveling every week, and I'm in one of our offices every week. And there is an extraordinary amount of goodwill and determination among my colleagues to make this work. Everyone gets that if we can make it work, the nature of the channel and our ability to connect with the audience will be different.
Is it also more complex with indies, working with indies? Because in a way, the big indies have been in London, and now you're, like, for instance, the Stuff Show is a good example. So that one there are 2 indies involved, one up north and Expectations, which is obviously a big London indie with, Tim Hinks and all those guys. I mean, is that why you did that? Because it's sort of to help the indies that are outside the M25 work better with big London indies? Or?
Is that why we did that particular?
Yeah, is that why you did that, or is that how you work going forward?
The Daily Show, it's a very simple thing. It was a tender process. It was a scrupulous tender process. There was a very clear creative winner. that creative winner, which we then put out to audience research, which validated the decisions that we'd made, it happened to be a co-production between a relatively small Yorkshire-based indie and a London-based indie. It's a big, complicated show that probably needs quite a degree of sort of support structure behind it.
Yeah, this is the Steph show, which is this current affairs show.
Yeah, which
you guys don't know.
But I mean, in reality, look, we made a commitment to spend 50% of our budget outside London by 2023, and we're on course to do that. And it's incredibly encouraging that even since we moved to Leeds, we've seen a number of companies open in Leeds. We've seen Pact open in Leeds. But the reality of it is that we're going to have a combination of multiple different things. We're going to have a combination of what some people call indigenous indies, companies that have been in Leeds or Manchester or Glasgow for years, a combination of companies which have been London-based but are opening in those areas, and a combination of, people hate the word, but lift and shift. And we've got a show, First Dates, which is moving in its next series from being London-produced to being based in Manchester and Bristol, which I think is a terrific step. And the innovation, I think, there is that we've built a training scheme into it to train 20 new members of production who will be Bristol-based. And I think we're all feeling our way here, and we have to do it with great sensitivity and collaborative spirit. And what's encouraging, I think, is that it will inevitably create frustrations, but most people are pretty grown up about understanding the mixed ecology that's going to be required. And most of the London companies who are making more and more stuff regionally understand that with that comes responsibility to develop the local talent pool and not just plunder it.
Yeah. Here's an interesting question. I was thinking about this the other day. If the changing political map in this country, the fact that there's many labor areas that have gone Tory, and just what's going on in the sort of macro, again, the political landscape, does that impact how you're thinking about commissioning for Channel 4? Because you've always been an urban, hip, young, edgy channel. Is because the political landscape has changed, and you're obviously have these centers in other parts.
I would answer that in a slightly different way, which is to say, look, since in my kind of journalistic lifetime, Brexit was the great sort of wake-up call, because the media classes didn't see it coming, and it's basically because they weren't out of London enough, and they weren't in the parts of the country that thought completely differently. And when we talk about how being distributed across the country as a channel can inform our programming making, I absolutely am thinking about things like having a bead on what was happening in the Great Red Wall. I think we will understand what's happening in the country better by being spread across it. And I'm seeing that already in the kind of conversations that we're having in our commissioning meetings.
Okay. I want to talk a little bit about talent and risk. You already mentioned O.T. Fagbenle, who is the actor in Handmaid's Tale, who's writing Max. Talk about comedy in general, because comedy is one of your big pushes. I mean, you talked about scale and fun and noise, but comedy's a big one for you. Why?
Well, I think comedy is very important for us because several things, really. Channel 4 has a fabulous tradition in comedy, going all the way back to Ali G, IT Crowd, In-Betweeners. And comedy, I think, has a sort of definitional quality about it. When you ask people what they remember, it's very often comedies. They're the flags in the sand. And also, curiously, we're going to the conversation we were having about SVODs earlier, in an environment that's gone sort of nuts in scripted drama. I think, is it 500 drama productions a year now?
Yeah, something like that, crazy.
And I think 240, 50 odd UK indies making drama. There isn't quite the same scrum in comedy.
Right.
So I feel that there's space for us to really carve out a clear, distinctive furrow as the home of the most original British drama. British comedy.
British comedy, yeah.
And drama.
And drama.
And so that's an area that I have invested in. And obviously Derry Girls was sort of out the gate hit 2 years ago. But I think if you look at the shows that we've had since then, I think Staff is absolutely one of the most distinctive and beloved.
I remember when I first saw Stath Les Flats, I thought, what is this guy? But he's funny.
Yeah, I
funny.
think I'm really proud of it. And I think we tried, Aisling Bede with her first big scripted piece. She's obviously someone we've known as comic talent for years on entertainment shows. But it was a fabulous piece that also rated strongly. And we had Year of the Rabbit. So we had 4 or 5 really interesting, I think, swings last year, some of which will come back next year.
Yeah. Comedy is risky, though, because, of course, it can fail spectacularly. It's hard to do good comedy.
Yeah, I think it's true. And most of it, frankly, doesn't make a huge contribution to the linear ratings of the channel. The truth, though, is that when you get it right, it has an incredibly long life. So if you look at our streaming service, All 4, some of the biggest titles on All 4 consistently, week in, week out, are our biggest comedies. So it's Friday Night Dinner, it's The In-Betweeners, it's Derry Girls.
So it's sticky for the BVOD or the catch-up, and it also has a halo effect probably for the channel in terms of if it works.
I think it does, but I think in a world where we're looking for those really big signature titles that can sit in the archive and generate millions of views year after year after year, it's worth throwing out some more fishing lines because every so often we're going to get another Derry Girls.
Should we run the Max clip?
Yes.
I think it's 120. Let's run
since I failed to introduce the last one.
Yeah, introduce this one.
So this is Otifag Bentley. He plays Max, who is a member of a boy band that's had a moment of brief success, and he's trying to stage a comeback, but it's a comeback no one wants. And this is the funeral of his bandmate.
Yeah.
It's astonishing that he's never done comedy, isn't it? I mean, he's a straight actor.
Yeah. He looks like a comic actor to me. Yeah. Okay, I want to open up to the floor. I'm going to ask you one more question before I do that, just so everyone can get ready. This is more about news, because you're also in charge of news, right, at Channel 4, the news programs. When you're head of news, Dorothy Byrne stands up in Edinburgh and gives the McTaggart lecture and calls Boris a known liar. How comfortable are you, as the head of current affairs, describing the current PM as a known liar? I mean, given the political situation, the politics of all that.
Look, I think that my main concern is about the news we put on air. And night after night, we put out what I think is probably the highest quality news program in the world that is consistently, that Ofcom has consistently given a completely clean bill of health to on impartiality. So I concentrate on the news we make, and I think it's first rate. And I think one of the most heartening things for me last year was that our news audiences were substantially up, both in volume and in share, and across all demographics. And I think that sort of speaks for itself.
But is there a risk of being too edgy? I mean, I'm thinking about the climate change debate when you had to empty chair the leader and you had ice sculptures, I think. I mean, was that the right thing to do, to put ice sculptures on their chair?
You'll be aware that the Conservative Party complained to Ofcom about the climate change debate, and that Ofcom gave quite a detailed ruling finding that it was both reasonable for Channel 4 News to empty chair the Prime Minister for not showing up, and Nigel Farage, and to put ice sculptures in their place, and that there was not a breach of impartiality rules.
Melting ice sculptures.
I mean, look, one thing I would observe from that is I've been involved in climate change reporting for 2 more years than I can remember. And I've spent a lot of years toiling, trying to get it into the heart of the political agenda, into the heart of the media agenda, and mostly failing. And what that debate did in one night was lever climate change into the heart of a British political election. And that, I think, I'm very proud of that. I think that's an extraordinary significant achievement.
Good. Questions for Ian Katz? We got lots of arms. So is there a second mic or just one? Yeah? Just one? You go ahead, whoever got the mic. Yeah. Hi, Jill.
Hi, Jill Grinder from the PRS. I was at the RTS convention in Cambridge in September, and Reed Hastings, the CEO and founder of Netflix, mentioned that one of his biggest regrets was that he passed on Fleabag, which we all know went to Amazon Prime. And I was wondering whether you had any similar regrets about a series or a program that you passed on.
I don't know whether to admit it. Shall I admit it?
Should you admit it? Oh, sure. What's the one that got away?
Well, the one that got away from me, although I have a huge number of extenuating circumstances, like the fact that I hadn't actually started the job yet.
Oh, well.
But I did look at Killing Eve, which I heard has
You
gone on to
looked
big
at
things.
Killing Eve. Oh, my God.
But before I started in this job, I got sent a first pilot episode of Killing Eve, which I thought was good.
Yeah, good.
But not quite good enough to say, do whatever you can, break whatever budget you need to get it. And as a result, we did bid for it, but we didn't get it. So
Yeah. The one that got away.
Killing Eve got away from me.
Yeah. Another one. There's this lady here, right there. Yep.
Hi, I had a little bit of a specific question.
Can you tell us who you are?
Oh, sorry, I'm Sabrina. I'm from Humblebee Films in Bristol. In light of the Living Wild Commission, I just wondered if that's a signal that you're going to be doing more natural history on Channel 4.
I'd love to do more natural history on Channel 4, and I think it's been sort of, if you remember going back years, there was some really inventive Channel 4 natural history, like Inside Nature's Giants. Was it Woolly Mammoth Autopsy? I think because it's such a well-trodden genre, and there is such brilliant programming on the BBC and elsewhere, I think we can only be in it where we have an absolutely distinctive take or point of difference. And the reason I've gone with Living Wild is because it's a very specific attempt to do what we did with Secret Life of the Zoo, which was to have almost a kind of, I'm trying to avoid using the word anthropomorphize because it's sort of pejorative, but we sort of did anthropomorphize the zoo and turn it into a soap. We turned the zoo into a very intimate, sort of character-driven soap. And Living Wild is an attempt to do something like that, but in a wild environment. So it's quite a big play for us. Beyond that, I'm open to any natural history ideas that feel substantially different enough from the kind of brilliant natural history we see everywhere else.
Mm-hmm. Okay. How about this one here? Where's the mic? Keep your hand up so she can get to you. There.
Hi, my name's Dana, and I'm from Disney.
Hi.
I think it's within the past 12 months that you have a new set of terms of trade with Pact, and it's the launch of BritBox and your relationship with them, and I think it's the second content exchange that you've had with Sky. Can you speak to those changes or developments in the past year and what that means in delivering on your ambitions for managing IPs going forward in this new media landscape?
So the Sky, like what, the sharing rights deals? Or?
That's probably less important, but more about the new terms of trade.
Okay.
And the relationship with BritBox in terms of realizing ambitions in managing your IPs and building them.
Well, you'll know that we don't have very much IP because we're a publisher broadcaster, so the IPs sit with the producers. But I suppose that to come to the terms of trade deal, just for those of you who are not aware, historically what Channel 4 did was to buy a UK license to a show, and then we would get a very small proportion, very small, I forget the percentage now, a percentage of the back end, so international sales and so on, and we would then reach
10 to 15%.
Thank God there's someone here who knows. Thank you. And we would then reach separate deals about the exploitation in the UK online and so on. And what we what we did with the PAC deal was to say, actually, what we really need above all else is flexibility about use of content in the UK on whatever platforms we choose to be operating on. So we said, we'll give you back, producers, that back-end share in exchange for full flexibility to use the content as we see fit on our VOD service or the VOD services that we distribute on.
Including BritBox.
Including BritBox.
Good answer.
Right? Did I get that right?
That was good, right? Keith,
and I
was
think
that right?
that just reflects a world in which we are increasingly bound to be reaching our viewers on multiple platforms and need the flexibility to do that.
There's a lady back here with, yes, put your hand up again. There you go.
Hi, Laura Mansfield, Outline Productions. You've talked about Channel 4. Can you share a little bit about your strategy for the portfolio of channels in regard to More 4 and E4?
Sure. So E4, the sort of key elements, I think, Carl talks about wanting the channel to be an entertainment channel with depth.
This is Carl Warner, the controller.
Warner, I should say, yeah. And the main things that he is trying to do, he feels that the channel needs a kind of tentpole signature show. I was going to mention that without mentioning Love Island, but there you are, I mentioned Love Island. And he's got quite a lot of work in trying to establish what that is. He's also trying to generate a new family of returnable factual strands in the spirit of sort of tattoo fixes that can be produced at quite high volume. And then he's got a comedy ents strand because I think he wants that to be a sort of defining flavour of the channel. So those are the sort of three main pieces. Obviously, E4 has always had a big acquisitions component. And one of the big challenges for us is that it's been the home of Big Bang Theory for years, still the home of Big Bang Theory, but there are no new Big Bang Theories. So we're also looking at what the key acquisitions are to
Fill the gap.
Fill that space. And actually, quietly, one of the things I was most pleased about last year was we bought Rick and Morty.
That's right.
Which,
Yep.
I think when you look at those very, very pure young brands that really speak to a 16 to 24 audience, we put Rick and Morty on E4. It did a sort of modest live audience, massive consolidated audience, and then a massive all four audience. And so we need more shows that are in that space. You asked me about More 4. Have I got time?
No, go ahead.
I think on More 4, what you're starting to see is obviously we brought Pottery to More 4 this month. It's now our biggest launch in, I want to say 7 years, but let's be safe and say 5. What you'll see over the next few months is a series of shows. We think that National Treasure's sort of authoring series is a good sort of defining flavour for More 4. So over the next few months, you'll see new series from Darcy Bustle, from David Jason, Phil Spencer, and I want that to be a sort of core flavour. We're also, have we announced this? Can I say we're launching a quiz?
Oh, yes.
Maybe I just did. Yes. Have we announced
Yes.
this? We also have a very, very brainy, difficult quiz, which is launching imminently, which I think is a flavour I want to develop on the show.
And it's going to be with Jon Snow, right?
Presented by Jon Snow. Yeah, it's called Very Difficult Questions.
Very difficult questions. That'll be perfect
And
for
it
John.
is.
And it is. Okay. I've got two hands back there. Let's go back there. That's that one. Yep. And then the one behind next.
Johnny Webb from Sundog High. And what problems can we help you solve in Factual?
You could give me a fantastic returnable precinct that will do 30 hours a year at a very modest tariff. No, look, I think I resist calling them problems because, I sometimes get people saying, why have you got so many of the the old shows on Channel 4, to which my answer is because they're in unbelievably good shape and doing incredibly well. So I'm blessed by not having, a load of burning problems that I've got to solve. I haven't got shows that are dying on their knees and need replacing tomorrow. But I do think there's a kind of interesting challenge around how we find broad, high-volume documentary spaces outside of the traditional blue light area, which Channel 4 is the master of. But we can't have a million cop shows and a million ambulance shows. We need to spread out across the gamut of British life, and we need to find the precincts that generate enough story to deliver 10, a dozen, 20 episodes a year. And then my other, again, I wouldn't characterize this as a problem, but it's increasingly becoming an obsession, is I'm constantly pestering Danny about what is the show which is going to capture the zeitgeist of this extraordinarily febrile moment in British history that we're living through? What is the show that in 5-10 years we're going to look back on the channel and say that nailed that crazy time around 2020?
You mean around Brexit or around...
there's so many different currents that are shaping what's happening in this country at the moment, from technology. I mean, from what Deliveroo is doing to our lives, to a moment when the British working class have substantially switched to voting Tory in large chunks of the country.
To fake news, to...
Yeah, so I feel like when I look back over the last 20 or 30 years, it feels to me like it's a moment of tectonic plates shifting, and we need, as a broadcaster, to be thinking across the genres. By the way, when I think back over the decades and think about the shows that defined different periods in history, they were often scripted. You think back to the Blair era, you think about The Thick of It. You think back to the 80s, you think about maybe Ovita's Own Pet, but often they are factual too. I mean, I think Benefit Street, for all the criticism that it received, absolutely nailed the moment. And so the show that I'm most craving at the moment is the show that nails this moment. And it probably won't be an on-the-nose piece. It'll be something that is brilliantly lateral, that is a individual story or a very brilliantly chosen microcosm that gets us into some or all of the changes that we're experiencing at the moment.
Thank you. Very good answer. Okay, there's a man back there. Yep. Who are you? Yeah, hi.
Hi, I'm Jake Jones. I'm currently on the Paris training scheme with Channel 4. So my question is, I suppose, I recently graduated from Leeds Trinity University, and I just wanted to know Channel 4's plan for utilising the local talent that is coming out of the multiple unis currently in Leeds.
I think they're planning on hiring some, right? Yeah.
I hope so. It's a big... When we were going around the country looking at where to move, one of the big attractions of Leeds was the number of young trained people available, not just, by the way, in terms of commissioning and the television we make, but all the way across the board, from tech to the other functions in the channel. I think the difficulty in commissioning for us always is that commissioning traditionally is a bad job to start your career, right? You have to be quite advanced in your TV career to get a job as a commissioner. That's why Channel 4 has always had a sort of slightly kind of hollowed out middle. We have some relatively junior people doing administrative roles, and then we have commissioners who are actually in very senior roles and need to have been out there and have made television. So one of the things we're thinking about at the moment is how can we create training schemes of the kind that I talked about, associated with first dates, that get people into productions at a relatively junior level. And we've also got a thing called the Channel 4 Academy, which is going to invest in creating a TV skills base in Leeds.
Good. There's one there, and there's two over here, so let's bring the mic over to this side of the room. Yep. Yep.
Hi, Ben Butterworth from First Light Entertainment. What are your thoughts and plans, if any, with the Young Audiences Content Fund with the BFI?
Well, we've got two or three interesting projects which are in with them, where the producer has bid for funds. And it's got the potential to be really transformative, particularly in areas like young scripted drama, which are very challenging economically for us to carry off because they tend to produce relatively low linear audiences, and therefore the return on investment is sort of disastrous.
What sort of you going down to then?
Well, if you think about, I mean, the YA drama, I don't know what YA is technically defined as, but, teens into maybe early 20s, that's quite a hard demographic for us to target directly because as a linear audience, they're relatively small. Now, sorry, I'm getting away from your BFI.
So the commercial impacts are small, so he can't fund it. So why you're doing the fund is you can get money from the fund.
Right.
That helps fund these.
if we can, there's two or three projects that we've got ranging from scripted to, we've got a couple of scripted projects and a sort of factual entertainment project. The real impact, I think, will be if it makes it possible for us to do much more targeted scripted stuff. The other factor in all of this, to move away from the BFI bit, is when it will cease to matter so much that the linear audiences for those shows are quite low. So one of the most encouraging things for me in the last 6 months is that End of the Fucking World Series 2, although it did a relatively modest audience in linear, did a huge number in all four. And so we're starting to get to the point where those shows become commercially viable for us because of the video on demand traffic.
Interesting, yeah. Then next to you, I think there's yes?
Hi, Faraz Osman from Indie Goldwaller. I wanted to ask about obviously you're making loads of investments into nations and regions and buying big brands across the board, but your original content, according to last year's annual report, your original content spend was down, the number of indie partners you had was down, the nursery slopes where smaller, newer indies could get content like education and shorts have kind of gone. There's been a lot of turnover in creative diversity. So I'm just wondering if the smaller, diverse indies, which used to be Channel 4's secret weapon, are kind of the casualties of this content and platform war that's now existing?
Well, there's a very specific issue that distorted the numbers last year or significantly influenced the numbers last year, which is that we did have previously quite a lot of original content that was commissioned for all four. And what all four did before I arrived was to stop commissioning originals to focus on acquired content, and that brought down the number of. So that reduction in numbers is largely explained by that. But and we're absolutely committed to working with as wide a range of indies as we can, and in particular diverse-led indies, and I think there are a number of ways that is going to improve in the coming years. The significant ones are some of the digital investment that I talked about earlier when we were talking about social. So there is now new money there to go at, and actually one of the things I'm really pleased about when I look at the comedy shorts is the range of regional indies that's coming from. But we've also shaped our indie investment fund to focus on regional and diverse indies. Right. So I think it's a key focus for us. I think the numbers are slightly misleading because of that change in strategy, and I think we'll see improvement in that.
Okay, take like one or two more. This lady and that lady. How about that?
Hi, I'm Jo from Broadcast. I just wanted to know if you could tell me a bit more about the teen strand and like what kind of content you're going to be looking for, because I feel like it's a bit vague at the moment exactly what that's going to be.
It's very vague, and I'm not going to be able to change that much right now. And the reason is that we've just hired Navi Lambert, who is a very brilliant former head of social content at BBC Three, and has just joined us as the E4 digital executive, and she is going to lead the tender process for the teen strand. So in the next month or so, she will be laying out exactly what we're looking for. There'll be a tender process, and next time I see you, Jo, or maybe the time after that, I'll be able to tell you what we're doing.
Okay, one more.
Can I just ask, is she under the DCU then? Because there's a teen strand coming out.
No, the Navi reports to Carl Warner, the controller of E4. The DCU does not commission content. It distributes it, and it optimizes it, and it is going to monetize it, and it is also going to work with our commercial departments to do branded content. They work with our commissioners like Navi and others. The Factual strand came out of our Factual team to optimize them for social and then to distribute them effectively.
Yeah, one more. Yep.
Lizzie Avery from NBC Universal. So your final question for the day, do you think BritBox is going to work?
Obviously, I think it's going to be a huge success. Otherwise, Channel 4 would not have joined it. Yeah. Who knows whether any of the multifarious streaming services that have emerged over the last year are going to thrive. I think BritBox has got an incredibly good chance. It's got a fantastic back catalogue of classic content, quite a bit of it that's going to be coming from Channel 4. I think it will probably appeal to an older demographic than some of the other services, so it has a point of difference. I think it's got as good a chance as any.
Okay, that's great. Well, this has been really interesting. Thank you, Ian. Can I please thank the audience for being here? Thank you very much. Could you please join me in thanking our speaker, Ian Katz?